I'm starting my literature PhD in a world where AI seems to be taking everything over. And I have to ask myself every single day why I read. Why do I bother reading when there's an LLM out there that I can just feed it the novel I want to talk about. It can summarize it well, it can extract quotations, and it can produce a half decent analysis. So why do I read? Why do I choose to actually do the readings? What am I getting out of this? Why do I read? And I think it comes down to this question or this quest for meaning. In an increasingly automated, seemingly meaningless, uncontrollable world, creating meaning in your own life has never been more essential. And so what I thought I'd talk about today is how to get more out of your reading, how to engage with it on a deeper level, and not just feel like you're also going on autopilot and thinking like an LLM about extraction and use and that sort of thing, but actually reflecting on what matters to you. So here's how I read now. Here are some tips that I've gained throughout my many, many years of study, and I'll share some general tips before getting into what I recommend for reading Russian literature specifically. So before embarking on a prose text or an article, I always ask myself, what am I most interested in? What am I hoping to get out of this? And I have several hobby horses or several research interests that I'm always on alert for. So for me, those are racial stereotypes and depictions of madness. So when I see something like that in a text, I immediately highlight it because you never know. Maybe I'll be talking about this thing in the context of Soviet Russia, but there was somewhere before where this exact thing was mentioned and looked at. So I'm always just on the lookout for those things that interest me personally. So if it's for a class and it doesn't interest me, I ask myself, why did the professor choose this? And the easiest thing you can do is just go to the syllabus, look at the course heading, the week heading, and readings are always arranged thematically, so you can see why they assigned this particular thing when they did. And it's important to do this because professors put in so much time and effort into selecting readings. They are not trying to make your life miserable. They are really trying to teach you something. And it's worth pausing to think about what the point even is. So always pay attention to structure. And what this looks like is, at the end of a chapter, you can annotate what happened in that chapter in just 2 words. Introduces characters, introduces setting. And I do this because it actually helps you understand how the writer achieves the effect that they do. And these things we learn in grade school about rising, action, climax, denouement, it's all still relevant to literary studies. We just take it to the next level. But it's worth thinking about how a writer constructs a text. And another way to do this is to think about narration. I always ask myself, who is telling this story? Whose perspectives do I have access to, and whose perspectives do I not have access to? And does the narration shift? Because sometimes, like with Chekhov, for instance, sometimes he's this zoomed out narrator, but then he'll insert these kinds of witty truisms, and they seem to come out of nowhere and they catch you off guard. So it's worth thinking about. It's worth asking yourself, okay, whose perspective am I not getting to see? And not taking, everything that your protagonist says for granted. And this is a way of creating meaning because you get a deeper sense of multiple worldviews. It's this kind of, I could talk a lot about a literary theorist in another video, but this idea of there being multiple voices in a text, and it's your job as a reader to kind of co-create meaning with the author, is something that really speaks to me. So grammatical things that I personally care about are question marks and ellipses. Every time I see a question mark, I ask myself the same question and it just immediately prompts reflection. And then when I see an ellipses, I think, what is this person hiding? What are they not telling me? and it's kind of an alarm bell in my head. So you can find your own little grammatical things that maybe you care about and you notice, but these are just mine. The last thing I recommend you do after you've read something is connect it to other things you've read. Whether it's from the same part of the world, the same time period, the same writer, it doesn't matter as long as you have a basis for comparison and you're aware of it. I would say beware of anachronisms, meaning taking something from a different time and place and then trying to apply it. The easiest way to do this is to apply your 21st century perspective onto something written in the past and apply your value judgment to a completely different society with completely different values. So if you do want to do that, just make sure that you know what you're doing and that you're self-aware of it. There's nothing wrong with it. Of course, like, we are the reader, we are the interlocutor. You're going to want to connect things to yourself in your own life. But literary scholars always talk about and state what they're doing and try to be cognizant of it. Now, when it comes to Russian literature specifically, the first thing you should really pay attention to are names. And I'm not talking about nicknames, patronymics. That goes without saying. I'm talking about speaking names. And this is a device where the character's name itself, usually their surname, tells you something about their personality. So in Nikolai Gogol's story, The Overcoat, we have the protagonist Akaki Akakievich, which literally means feces. And if you don't know that, it'll just take you a little longer to kind of see what Gogol's getting at. Or, for example, in Anna Karenina, the protagonist Levin, in his name is Lev, which is Tolstoy's first name. So automatically we know this is an autobiographically based character. So speaking names. Next, pay attention to when it was written and where. So often a lot of great works of Russian literature were actually serialized over the course of many years. And where they were published also matters. What journal? I mean, maybe if you're not that into it, maybe you don't care, maybe this is just me, but for me, it says so much about the surrounding context. So the number one thing I would do is find out who was in charge, who was the ruler at that time, who was the Tsar, who was the dictator. Find out, because Russian literature, since its inception, has been a top-down, state-controlled entity. So finding out who was in charge will tell you a lot about, what was literature like at this time, what things could be said, what could not be said, which is just as important. The last thing I'll say is find out a little bit about your author. Who were they? When were they alive? Who were they in conversation with? Because I would say, maybe I shouldn't say all Russian literature, but the great majority of it is in dialogue with one another. Authors are responding to other authors, and if you don't look that up, you're gonna miss so much. Like, for example, I think the thing that annoys me most is how misunderstood Dostoevsky's Notes from Underground is. Dostoevsky is replying to the work of Nikolai Chernyshevsky, his novel What Is to Be Done, and he is completely disagreeing with Chernyshevsky. He is saying, look at your nihilism, look at how base and vulgar it is. Dostoevsky himself was a Christian man. He had plenty of beliefs. And so when people look to his kind of downtrodden, grumpy, emo protagonist and actually identify with him, it is hilarious to me because Dostoevsky's making fun of this guy. He's saying what a horrible person this is. So yeah, that's all I can think of for today. Let me know if you found this helpful and what kinds of videos you'd like to see from me in the future. Lately, I've been interested in sharing more about my PhD and kind of my thought process behind things. But if there's a specific Russian or Slavic work you'd like me to cover, please feel free to let me know. All right, have a lovely rest of your day.